Hello Grandmasters, Mike from the WCA with the Week 7 update from the fall semester. We are taking a look at one of the original positions Russ and I used to use way back when we first started the WCA. It is a wonderful calculating position, and we're not quite there yet. This is going to turn into one of the puzzles that we sent out in the Week 6 update. It was a pretty long calculating line that you had to find. We're not quite there yet. This is still the middle game, and we're a couple of moves away, but I wanted to give you an introduction of how we got to that position. So if you were to take a look at this position in front of you here, it's really confusing. It is coming from a very sharp variation of the Sicilian defense, and it's common, believe it or not, in these types of Sicilians to see the black king in the middle of the board, as you see here. And you may think that black is absolutely worse here because of the location of the king, but it's really not that easy for white to crash through just yet. White is slightly better and has obviously attacking chances, but you can't dismiss it so quickly, because if you look over here, and I'll circle the black queen, she's dangerously close to the white king, and some of the pawns around his castled position have been moved already. There's already a rook pointing directly at him here. We have a pawn in the way, but there's all sorts of tactics that could take place. So black has their chances too, and if we did a little bit of set position analysis, you would find king safety being a real issue here. When you show this position to a group of strong players, you can get some heated arguments. Some people thinking that it's actually white who could be in trouble, and those are usually the Sicilian players who know how to generate counterplay for black in these kinds of setups. And then obviously you're going to have a whole handful of people that think white is just winning because the black king is stuck in the middle. But you have to go a little bit further, and one of the keys to looking at a position like this is the pawn structure. And here, because the pawns are not in contact everywhere, and there are also places where you could possibly open up lines, it becomes very difficult to play these types of positions. So let me give you a couple of examples. Here, if you look at the black pawn on a6, in one move, you can play a pawn break. And remember, the definition of a pawn break is basically when you have two pawns, one from each team, that are face to face, like the pawn on b5 and a4 on b4 are here. They can't move right now. So if you attack one of those pawns from the side, you're going to have the ability to open up a line. So in this case, if black were to play the move a5, white can't prevent that. So black then could take on b4, and that would completely open the a file. So that's what pawn breaks are used primarily for, to open up lines, right? Well, if you look on this side of the board, there are two pawns that could take each other right here. Black may not want to take back because the queen could take the rook, so we have a pin over here. But all things being equal, these two pawns could trade, and that would cause some lines to open up. Look over here in the middle. Pawn f4 would be a break against this pawn. Pawn c4. There's a whole bunch of places in this position that could open up lines for either player. So as it turns out, with black to play, one move that black could do here, and it is black's turn, is black could have played the move g6. And that looks really strange, but it was important for black in this position to prevent this pawn here from moving, because when it moves, and I'll take you back to the original position here, when it moves, it's going to attack this pawn on f7. And if this pawn is either traded or captured or moved, that's going to open up the e6 square. And that e6 square is already being eyed by the queen here on h3. And if she gets in here with a check, that's going to do a couple of things for white. It's not only going to disrupt the position for black here, but it's also going to protect the e-pawn. And in a moment, you'll see why that's important for white. So anyway, this pawn g6 move for white is going to be pretty strong coming down the road. A couple of other very quick observations, because we're not going to do a long set position analysis. I want to get you as quickly as possible to the calculating position we looked at. You'll see there's a pin here. The queen pinning this knight on d7. It has to be careful where it moves, because the rook could just hang on c8. The b6 square is covered by this bishop. So this knight here doesn't really have many safe squares to move to at the moment. And if it can't get out, it's going to be a little difficult for white or for black to generate counterplay. However, the rook and the queen, that's a whole lot of force. And as long as they stay active and get some play against this king, black will keep their chances. But it appears that black is a little more tied up than white. That's pretty clear. Okay, so let's take a look at the game continuation. In the game, black gave a check on a1. And you don't know exactly why players do this. Sometimes, just as a little tournament hint, some of the tournaments you play in have time controls. And this check that black played was on move 20. And when I mean time controls, I mean time controls where sometimes you have to make a certain number of moves to get extra time. So the Marshall Chess Club in Manhattan, for example, has a lot of tournaments where you have to play 30 moves in 90 minutes. And once you make your 30th move, you're given an additional hour of time to play. So I don't know what these guys were playing. It appears to be a slow chess game. It's from ChessBase 1979, and it doesn't say it was a rapid game, which means they were probably playing a kind of position where very often if you get to your 30th move, you're given some time. So maybe black played the check to get closer to that time control, or as in the game, just to disrupt the white king. So white plays king to c2, and black could check again, clearly check again. I want to just show you some patterns. Say the king goes to b1. Black has this pretty cool move, rook takes c3, which looks like a blunder because you're giving up a rook, but you're really not, because when the pawn takes, you have queen b3 check. And in this position, black has a forced draw. No matter how you get out of check, whether you go to c1 or a1, the black queen can just keep swinging back and forth here. And depending on if you block with the bishop here, you could either get a draw, or the queen could come over here and take this bishop. So black is going to get a lot of play in this line, and it's a theme that pops up in the game. So queen a4 would have been a very strong possibility here. But instead, back from here, black decides to play queen a2, and pinning this pawn and just possibly preparing a5. But it allowed white to play the move pawn to g6. And white had another option here, which I'm sure a lot of you had seen already if you're looking at this position. A very natural thing to do would be to play rook to a1. And you'll see here that black's only move is to take this pawn on e4. And I mentioned to you before, if this pawn were protected, the black queen would even, she'd be lost right now. But she's not here. She could take. White could take on a6 with the rook. And this is pretty good for white, because black now doesn't have control of that a file. And if you try to get your pieces out, black could play, or white could play a move like rook a7, which prevents you from castling right now because you'll lose your knight here. The rook is combined with the queen on this square, and black is going to experience some real pressure with these two pieces. So this looks pretty good for white, right? But watch what white does instead. In this position, white plays the move g6, and it's very, very strong. But let's talk about why a player with the white pieces would even find this move in the first place. Okay, so you're faced with this position, you're playing white, and as a WCA player, I mean, we don't have masters in the class, so they're always asking questions like, well, I get into a position like this, and it's really sharp, and there's a lot going on, and I never know what to do. So, don't feel bad. It's very common. Masters, when they're in a position like this, they kind of do the set position analysis that we do, but they do it in a way that they've done so much of it, it's kind of like riding a bicycle. They're not even thinking that much here. It's just so natural for them to play a move that kind of disrupts the area where the black king is, and that's primarily because he's not castled. So again, anytime you see your opponent has their king in the middle, and you spot one of your pieces that could check and attack him, ask yourself, really, what's preventing you from playing that check? If you think the check is very strong, then it's a move you probably want to play. Well, you can't do it right now because there's a pawn here on f7. So what white does by playing g6 is white is going to get this pawn to move somehow or just take it, and that's going to open up this square here on e6. It's a very, very strong idea. So black sees it and plays a check. And he's going to try to regroup his pieces and play a little trick here. King goes to b1, and now this cool move, rook takes c3. And rook takes c3 is kind of setting a couple of traps here. Number one, if you just take the rook, this is the same kind of position I showed you before. The queen could check on b3. Say you play king c1, queen takes on c3, and it's not so easy to get out of this. The bishop can come to c2, queen could take on e3, king goes to b2, and now maybe black takes the pawn, you take the pawn check, and the king goes to d8. And all of a sudden the position has completely changed. Again, you can have a couple of nice arguments here and say that white is clearly winning because of the location of the black king, but is that really true? I mean, look at the position of the white king over here. Things have really opened up for both sides. There's some material imbalance, but if you look at the position carefully, you're going to find that there's going to be chances for both sides here. So after this move, rook takes c3. White finds this idea of rook to c1. And rook c1 is basically trying to get control of the c file here, and then following up with some check, and then black is going to get caught in the middle for sure. And black sets another little trap here, this time offering a rook on a3 if you take it. And this was actually the position that you guys got in the video or in the update last week. Well, they're also threatening checkmate in one move. So there's a problem here. You can take the rook, but if you take the rook, black's not going to take it with the queen. They're going to check you here. And how to get out of check? Well, this time you can't go to c1. You're going to have to go to a1, and if black wants, they have a draw. You just go back, and they're going to keep checking you, and if black wants, they have a draw. So we asked you in the video, in this position, after rook a3, does white have anything better than taking the rook on a3, which would lead to a draw? And it turns out they do. They're actually going to checkmate black from this position, and the move that solved it. And again, I'm not going to ask you guys to stop the video, although you can. If you didn't get a chance to look at this last week, you may want to stop the video and work this out for yourself, and you can do that at any time. But the move that wins the game is queen takes d7, and it's over. Black is going to get mated. A couple of people in the class suggested the move here, which is also very strong, but black is not going to take that pawn. Black could play the move king to d8 and possibly survive this for a while. So that wasn't as clear or as forcing as queen takes d7, which is absolutely crushing. Very cool move to find in a game to sacrifice the queen. Well, what to do is black? Well, here you have to take the queen. So you take the queen, and now the follow-ups start. So whenever you calculate a queen sacrifice, you obviously need to make sure that you see things all the way through. The problem for black here is there's absolutely no defense for the king. The rook here on a8, the bishop on f8 are on their original squares. The queen and the rook, that's 14 points of power, are literally cut off from the defense of the king because of these pawn wedges here. So there's no defense from these pieces. So white really isn't down a queen in this position. White, to some degree, is up 4 pieces because black's 4 pieces are completely out of the game, and all 4 of white's pieces are actually going to be able to attack this king. And let's add a fifth piece, and that would be this pawn here on g6. And you'll notice that I said let's add a piece, not a pawn. And I like to think that pawns on the 6th rank, you can see that number 6 here for white, the 6th rank near the enemy king, as long as that pawn is protected or being or helped by other pieces or supported by other pieces, that pawn can clearly have the value of a piece. So how do we continue? Well, as a forced checkmate. Bishop f5 check, very, very strong. There are some alternatives that could be played here, so I'm going to show you the main lines, and then if there's some other sideline that you guys find and you want to go over in class, we'd be happy to look at it for you. And by the way, in the actual game, after queen d7, black resigned. So must be a strong master playing black, and just had to calculate, why is my opponent giving up the queen? And he just got to calculating and realized, yeah, it's pretty much over. So he just resigned here. But for the rest of us, let's take a look at what would have happened. King takes, bishop f5 check. Now where to go? Let's say king d8. Now the rook on c1 comes into the game with a check, supported by the bishop on f5. And you'll see how the pieces really work well together. King e7, and now a nice in-between check. Rook c7. It's important to play this move because it prevents black from doing a lot of things. Black cannot escape up this route here. If he tries to move to f6, it's mate in 1. Rook takes f7, so that's not going to work. You could try here king d8. Now you have rook d7. If you go to e8, checkmate, one move. And all three pieces are working really, really well together. The bishop supports the rook, the pawn does the check, and the rook takes away all the escape squares. So that's not good. So king e8, that's not going to work. Let's go back to king d8 here. You have this nice in-between move, rook to d7. If the king goes to the left this time, then you have a forced checkmate, much like the main line we're going to show you. And who do we bring into the game now? You have a nice discovered check, and I know a lot of you are tempted to move this rook and play a discovered check, but you'll find in a hurry, and it's a great idea to remember in chess, unless you have an absolute forcing line with this discovered check, don't play it. Instead, bring your last remaining piece into the attack, and you'll get so much more out of it. Rook to c1 check. Now, black could block these checks at any time with the queen or the rook, but you'll just take them both, so it doesn't help to block. King to b8. Now we bring the bishop into the game, check. King is forced to a8, and then you have mate in 1. Okay, so let's go back to bishop f5, just to make sure you guys see that all of this is forced. King to d8, rook c8, king e7, rook c7, again a very important in-between move, and then the more natural king e8. And that's where your pawn comes into play. Pawn takes on f7 check, forcing the king to d8. And now we have the same pattern we had before, except now after rook d7 check, the black king doesn't have the option to come to e8. Now he's forced to go to c8, and you guys should see the mate in 3 from here. It's the same pattern from the other position. So again, you guys can stop the video at any point. Rook c1, king b8, bishop a7, king a8, and checkmate. Okay, so if you made it this far, congratulations. This was not easy at all. As a matter of fact, Rusa and I used to use this position to evaluate a lot of the stronger players who would come into the 4 o'clock class. And here's what we would do with those guys, and then we'll conclude the video. What we would do with that class, if you remember back to this position when black played rook to a3, remember white challenged on the file, and then black played rook a3. So in this position is where black gets mated. So white has actually, and I'm going to say the moves out loud, and I'll do them slowly so you can pause the video if you need to. But from this position, we have a mate in 9, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and we would actually get the kids to calculate all of this without moving the pieces. So let's see if you can do it. Okay? Queen takes d7. So queen takes the knight on d7. The one line that we're going to look at is king takes queen, then bishop f5 check, king d8, rook c8 check, king e7, rook c7 check, king e8, pawn takes f7 check, king to d8, rook d7 check, king c8, rook c1 check, king b8, bishop a7 check, king a8, and rook c8 checkmate. You can do the math, and if you can do the calculation, you just calculated 9 moves. You just did a checkmate in 9 in your head. You can replay the video, go to any point that you want, and push yourself. See how much of this you can see without moving the pieces. All right, you guys are doing a great job this semester.